Oh, goody.
All right, what's going on, everybody? Zombies here again, and today we're back with another Mercenaries video. So in this one, we're going to be doing something a little bit different. I wanted to take some time to talk about Trigore. So it's no secret that when this character got buffed, it spawned one of, if not the worst and most unenjoyable Mercenaries metas that has ever existed. And with the big drop, a lot of things have changed. Trigore isn't quite as overrepresented in every other comp like he used to be, but at the same time, he is still very powerful. And I kind of wanted to talk about that and if he is still in a position where he should be a candidate for being nerfed. So, excited to talk about this. We're going to dive into it. Before we do, if you enjoy this type of content, do remember to like and subscribe. It does a ton to help out the channel and keeps the Mercenaries videos coming. So let's talk about Trigore. So if you don't know, I have been a pretty fierce advocate for changing Trigore. I think it was good that they initially made him from a unplayable character to a playable character. I always like seeing that happen when it does. But the way they went about doing it, I think, just is a bit too much. And for a while, things have, I still think generally the meta right now overall is in quite a good place. And if you didn't see it, I did put up a tier list video recently. And on that tier list, you might notice that Trigore is the only character I currently think is worth the spot of S tier. And there's a very simple reason for that. The thing with Trigore is he does kind of what Valeera was doing for a while, but now I think we have a bit more reasonable counters to Valeera even outside of Trigore, and I don't think she is kind of warping things quite as much as he is. So I do think generally we have a pretty interesting metagame, but the problem is Trigore, by existing in its current form, really locks out and shuts down a lot of other comps that can have, I think, a lot of potential and can lead to an even more varied and interesting metagame. And the reason for that, unsurprisingly, is Backlash. Backlash is far too good at what it does. And I think it's just not a very skill testing skill. It just does way too much, and I have some ideas for how it could be much more balanced. Now, I've been an advocate for balancing this character for a while. There have been kind of three main characters in Mercenaries that I think have been deserving of getting hit by the nerf bat, those three being Trigore, Localar, and Valeera. But I think right now, at this point in time, Trigore is really the only one, I think, that really needs to have some kind of change, and even a relatively small change would have a very, very positive impact on the meta without kind of just throwing Trigore right back into the dumpster tier. We don't have to do that. I'm a fan of when characters are more playable, and I like that Trigore went from being unplayable to very useful. The problem is he slots into everything for the most part, whether you're using attackers, whether you're using protectors or casters or whatever. He just goes into pretty much any comp, and you don't need him in every comp quite as much as you did in the past, and the HS replay data does kind of reflect that, as he isn't in quite as many comps as he was before. But I think the problem is he really, really almost single-handedly shuts down a lot of comps that are maybe not quite tier 1, but maybe on like the fringe of tier 1, tier 2, tier 3. He just shuts these comps down, and it's not even close. It's not even a game against Trigore with some of these comps. Now, that's going to happen with other meta comps. There's always going to be a worse deck or worse Mercenaries, and you're never going to have all 97 Mercenaries being perfectly balanced with one another. But I think there's some very simple ways we can change this character and have them be a lot more enjoyable of an experience. So how would I go about changing Trigore? There are a few options. I think one option that's pretty reasonable, Backlash should not give attack permanently. I think it enables some really ridiculous snowballing, and it's kind of the reason why you don't really have a choice against Trigore comps. You aren't making an interesting or dynamic decision about what to deal with what your opponent's playing, because you see Trigore there, you're killing Trigore, because if you don't respect the Trigore, he's going to deal a ton of damage to you and then scale up more and do it again, and then you're going to die. It's pretty simple. So there's really just not a lot of decision making there. It's, you see Trigore, you have to kill Trigore. He's also a one-button mercenary. You're always just pressing Backlash. The only time you might frenzied attack or something is if you get slowed or something like that. And regrow heads just does not ever happen. We are getting a new Merc shortly, who actually I think will be out by the time this goes live, maybe. Yogg, and I think Yogg also provides kind of interesting pseudo counter to Trigore with his skill 1, kind of messing up the speeds. Because part of the problem is Backlash happening on 1. There's very few abilities in the game that you can get off before this gets active, so you can't really play around it very effectively. But let's talk about possible solutions. So one, like I said, just don't give this permanent attack. I think giving this permanent attack is definitely a mistake. The fact that you go from 10, and this is just base Trigore, right? Like if you have Kazakis or Rexar or a number of other things, Galvangar, that buff up his attack, it gets even more absurd. But you start going to at 19, then it goes to 28, and it goes up so fast. And then if you're getting in for a crit, you're just deleting greens instantly. And I don't think that's really a great thing for the game, because it really limits the amount of green units you can use as an opener when Trigore is as prominent as they are. But that's not the main way I would fix it. I think there are two really good ways you can fix this character and make them still playable, but not as annoying or oppressive. And here are the ways I think we should do that. Basically, Backlash should either be limited to how many times it can go off, because the big problem is it should not be able to be used both offensively and defensively. That's the root of the problem. You should have to make a trade-off. You can either use it offensively and then it doesn't work out for you on the defense, or vice versa. And I think that would really solve a lot of the issue. So I think the ways to do that would be, one of them, limit the amount of procs it can get. Now, if you wanted to be kind of fun and thematic, you could limit it to 3. I think limiting it to 3 is probably still too strong. I think if they were to limit the amount of procs it can do in a turn, that number should be 2. Even 3 would probably still be better, because then if they attack in with 2 things and a summon, you can act afterwards and not take any residual damage. But I think 2 would probably be the more balanced version of that, if that was the way to go about doing it. So that's one idea, because that would kind of force it to be a trade-off between using it as protection and using it as offense. Or the other way, which I think is kind of more in line with the name of the skill, which is Backlash, and Trigore being a protector, he's supposed to be protecting your units. Backlash should only trigger on your opponents damaging your stuff. It should not trigger off of residual damage your characters take from swinging in. I think that's really stupid. It makes it so free that you're just getting this additional 19 or more than that if you're critting damage on turn 1, in addition to dealing a lot of damage with other characters. It's just too free, and I really don't think it is a good thing for the long-term health of the game. As long as this character is around, the metagame is going to be warped by him in one way or another. And even though I think the metagame is in a relatively solid spot and there is a lot of variety, when it comes to the top tier comps, I think in terms of what is keeping a lot more strategies out and kind of reinforcing more of a rock, paper, scissors kind of order of things, it's Trigore. It all comes back to Trigore. I think there are now enough reasonable counters to characters like Valera and Localar to where they're probably still power outliers, but they don't feel like they are determining so many of the games. And it gets even more ridiculous when you start pairing those very strong characters with Trigore to use as protection and more damage boost. It just gets kind of out of hand very quickly. So I kind of wanted to talk about this because I know it's a very hotly talked about thing in the community. And I mean, really what inspired this was yesterday just running into an onslaught of Trigore comps when I was trying new stuff, and you just get absolutely bodied, and it doesn't even feel like I'm playing a game against them. It feels like they're playing chess and I'm playing checkers. It's just on another level, and it's not unbeatable. There are ways to beat it, but it really kind of makes you more have to play a specific counter or a specific meta comp to stand a chance, and I don't think that's good for the long-term health and variety of PvP. So I wanted to talk about this. I'm sure everyone here has some thoughts as well, so I'd love to hear them in the comments below. What do you think is the best way to change Trigore? If you were going to get a change, do you like the ideas I presented? Do you have some other ideas that I haven't talked about here? Let me know in the comments. And if you enjoyed it, do remember to like and subscribe, and I will catch you in the next one. Peace.